Welcome, everyone. On behalf of Despierta Boricua at Yale, we're honored to have you all here for our second day of our 50th anniversary celebration weekend. Since 1971, when the idea of Despierta Boricua was conceived, Despierta Boricua has provided students of Puerto Rican heritage with a space to educate, celebrate, and motivate one another through the collective appreciation of our shared Puerto Rican identity. This celebration will go well into tonight via Zoom and is really meant to serve as a space for an appreciation of Despierta Boricua's past, while also serving as a catalyst for Despierta Boricua's future. The 50th anniversary celebration is a 2-day program curated by the Despierta Boricua Planning Committee with an audience composed of Yale students, alumni, and members of the Puerto Rican community from across the nation. Our goal is to celebrate the efforts of Puerto Rican students at Yale in cultivating their own space within the Yale community and establishing an important legacy in Yale's history. As such, our event, Despierta Boricua, Honoring Our Past, Igniting Our Future, serves to highlight the struggles and successes of Despierta Boricua and Puerto Rican Yalees in driving social change, racial, and economic change on campus. Thank you all for being here with us to celebrate. And as a thank you to 2 lucky attendees, we'll be randomly giving away 2 copies of War Against All Puerto Ricans during this Saturday afternoon session by Nelson Antonio Dennis after this afternoon's events. Now, before we move on, as a final note, please be courteous to speakers and have your microphones off during the event, unless we're in a session where the audience members are welcome to participate. We'll be recording all sessions today, except for a few, unless individuals don't want to be recorded. And if you'd like to see any of the if you'd like to only see some speakers, feel free to go to your top right corner and switch your view from gallery view over to speaker view. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our second keynote speaker for our event series, Edil Sepúlveda Carlo. Mr. Sepúlveda Carlo is the co-founder of Boricuas Unidos en la Diáspora, a national advocacy organization that builds bridges between Puerto Rican community leaders and federal lawmakers through an educative, anti-colonial, and social justice lens. He's also a NASA Earth scientist, licensed attorney, climate change expert, and social activist originally from Puerto Rico and currently living in Washington, D.C. He holds a BS in geology from the University of Puerto Rico Mayagüez, a JD from the University of Puerto Rico School of Law, and a master's degree in climate and society with an energy and environmental policy concentration from Columbia University in the city of New York. Without further ado, I'll hand it off to Mr. Edil Sepúlveda Carlo.
Gracias, Christian, and thank you, everyone. So I'm told that I have 20 minutes or so to entertain you, so I'm gonna do that. Hopefully, I'm thankful that you're all joining in a Saturday morning. So I'm gonna share my screen here just to show some slides, and you can follow me through. You can tell me if you can see them. Christian, you can see them?
Yes, we can see them fine.
Perfect. So thank you again, Christian. I am very grateful, for reaching out and inviting me to be the keynote for this, the 50th anniversary celebration of Despierta Boricua. So congratulations to all of you. I'm very grateful to be with you all. So I'm gonna be showing a couple of slides so you all don't get bored. And then I also have some cues for myself. So I'm not here speaking more than 20 minutes. And then I want just to leave a couple of minutes if it is possible. So if you all have any questions, we can go quickly over that. So Christian reached out to me and he told me that you all wanted to know a little bit more, or for me to talk a little bit more about activism and the activism work that I do with Boricuas Unidos en la Diáspora. So most of my speech is going to be focused on the activism work that we do. I'll just start with a brief background of myself, how I got to NASA, the work that I do in NASA, then move to talk about the activism work that I do with Boricuas Unidos en la Diáspora, and then finish talking about the most important thing for me, and hopefully for you all, that is, what can you do? What can you do if you want to advocate for Puerto Rico from the diaspora? So I was born in San Germán, Puerto Rico. You all know West Coast, Puerto Rico, into a working family. They still live there. I still visit San Germán a lot. I'm planning to go there in a couple of weeks. Um, I was born into a very patriotic family, so many of them are musicians. They do música jíbara, right? That is like autochthonous music from Puerto Rico. So they teach me since I was a little child the importance of the love for your land, the love for Puerto Rico, and that was very important for me. Um, then, as Christian mentioned, I did my undergraduate studies on UPR in Maya West. That's where I get my research and science background. That's also where I learned how to like hang out until very late and then get up the next morning and go to class. So I got a lot of discipline, going there to UPR Maya West. Then I went to the law school in University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras, and that's where I learned to be an activist. So usually when you're in Puerto Rico, at least at my time, this was like mid to late 2000s. It was like UPR Maya West are the ones who are like the nerds and everything like that, right? Engineer, science. And then UPR in Rio Piedras are like, los problemáticos, the people that are always like in strikes and everything like that. And that happened to me. So I learned to be an activist around all of these students that were really activists. I was coming from a science background. Many of them were like political science, economics, psychology. So I started doing a lot of like focusing on environmental law courses and environmental law work that I could do as a student. I got involved, that I think is very important, with the Environmental Law Association, the Student Association at the law school. Then the strike, there was a big strike in 2010 that lasted months and months. I got to learn a lot about organizing during that time. And then I got into my legal practice that I did in the environmental law clinic that we have at UPR. And there at that time was the big fight against what some of you might know about the Gasoducto del Norte. That was a natural gas pipeline that was coming from the southern part of Puerto Rico, cutting through the mountains and going to the northern part. And there we got involved in the legal procedures representing many of the families and communities that were going to be expropriated from their houses, to make uh, to let this pipeline be constructed. So we engage, and I learned to engage many organizations, community-based organizations in the mountains in Puerto Rico, especially an organization that is called Casa Pueblo in Adjuntas, that they do a lot of environmental work, activism work. So there was a lot of like organization of protests, direct actions, and everything like that. So that played a very important role in myself. Um, and then basically when I graduated from law school, I continued doing work in the environmental legal arena with an organization that was doing environmental work for communities in Puerto Rico. After that, I went to Columbia University, and that's where I got my interdisciplinary background. It was climate science and policy, and it was basically, trying to tie together the science, and specifically the climate science, with the impacts on society, and taking into account the impacts on society and how to like engage with policy and decision makers. And that's where I started doing more also climate change research focus. And I met, people doing research with NASA, something important in Columbia University. There is a NASA research center that is GISS, Goddard Institute for Space Studies, and they basically are the research center of NASA that do all of the research regarding climate change science. I also met amazing colleagues that I continue to be friends up to this day. So that's so important to keep these networks that you have that you're doing right now in the university. So after that, I traveled the world. I ended up in Africa, specifically West Africa, Equatorial Guinea. I was doing oil and gas contracts, and that was definitely not for me. I didn't feel happy about this. So I went back to Puerto Rico. Uh, I started doing more climate change consultancy work and environmental consultancy work for government. And then finally in 2015, after trying, for, like many times, I got, my job. That is the job that I still have today at NASA. So I moved from Puerto Rico to Washington, D.C. In 2015. So a little bit about what I do at NASA, and many people might not know, and I'm gonna tell you, even when I was in university, I didn't know that NASA did Earth science work. So usually we think that NASA as an agency that study the space and galaxies and everything like that, but NASA does have what is called an Earth sciences division, and basically what we do is study the changes on the planet, on planet Earth, but from space, either from space with satellites or with other instruments that are flying in airplanes. So specifically, I work at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center that is just outside Washington, D.C. in Greenville, Maryland. And within that, in the Biosphere Sciences Lab. And I work as the applications coordinator of one project that is called the Carbon Monitoring System of NASA, basically trying to monitor greenhouse gas emissions around the world. An applications coordinator, because what we do is kind of applied sciences, and the simplest way of explaining this is just being a bridge between the scientists and the decision makers and the users of the data. So I have loved this job just because it's a mix of what I have prepared, basically knowledge about the science, the carbon science, the climate science, but then knowing how to translate that science and the data that we have to the user community and to decision makers, so the data that we have can be used for societal benefits. That at the end, that's the most important thing. So I have gotten involved in a lot of work related to climate change, working at NASA. So most of the data and the products that we have applications for climate change. They also have applications for disasters and also for conservation topics. So obviously I'm very happy because my background was environmental science, environmental law. So getting to do this work at NASA it has been very fulfilling for me. Also in the last couple of years, I've gotten involved in a project that is NASA in Spanish. And it's basically trying to bring all of the information and studies that we're doing, but doing so obviously in Spanish for the Spanish-speaking media. So I've gotten the opportunity, to be interviewed by TV networks in the United States that are focused on Latino populations, and then also in Latin America and in Spain, talking about some of the efforts that we're doing trying to track climate change. So that's the work at NASA. It has been, like for me, has been obviously like a dream, but I didn't feel completely fulfilled. There is a lot of like what I was thinking about, what can I do for Puerto Rico? I moved to the States when Puerto Rico has been in turmoil, for many years. The economic crisis, many young people leaving the island to try to get opportunities outside the island. So there has always been in my mind, like, what can I do? What can I do? And there were two triggers, very important at that time, like 1-2 years after I got to NASA. And one was Hurricane Maria, hitting the island on 2017. But also, and I imagine you all, depending and talking here about politics a little bit, the last administration that the United States had wasn't very friendly with a lot of things related to Puerto Rico or to climate change or to some of the things that and I think many Puerto Ricans care. So that's why I decided to move to the activism work. So here is just a collection of some of the work that we have done, for the past like 3 years or so. Um, so we started this group of friends, colleagues from the University of Puerto Rico Law School that we are in different parts of the United States. And we decided that we had to like join forces to try to work the topic of Puerto Rico within the United States and the networks that we had. Uh, we were very influenced by the lack of democratic tools and the absence of power to make our own decisions in Puerto Rico. The approval of PROMESA legislation in 2016 was another trigger for us. We were like, and this is a problem that we have always think about. We are a colony. What we can do about this, we can't make the decisions on our own. So right around that time, Hurricane Maria hit. And if there is one thing that I say that was positive, obviously among all of the bad things that happened with Hurricane Maria, was that the topic of Puerto Rico became more mainstream in the national media in the United States. And many people started getting very interested about Puerto Rico and learning about many things that they didn't know about Puerto Rico. And at the same time, in Washington, obviously the power center of the United States, where we have U.S. Congress, the doors got open to talk about Puerto Rico, and we took that advantage. So in a summary, what we do, we focus in four areas. We do educational forums, and it's basically informational forums to educate mainly Americans in the US about topics of Puerto Rico, specifically just recovery, the public debt, and decolonization. And to give you an example, just this year, a couple of months ago, we did a Puerto Rico Diaspora Summit with the Smithsonian Institution. And one of the panels that we have, that was a 2-day event, one of the panels was on student organizations. And that's where I got introduced to Christian Millan, that he was one of the panelists. We also do advocacy and lobbying efforts in Congress. We do, for example, some of the photos that you see there is from a lobby day that we did on September 20, 2019, in the 2-year anniversary of Hurricane Maria. We brought people from Puerto Rico to fly here to Washington to talk directly to the Congress people. We got Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez there, being part of kind of like a direct action with music that we did there in Congress. We also do direct actions like protests. We were very involved in the Ricky Renuncia protests of summer 2019 on the state side, on Washington, New York, and many other cities. And we also do cultural events to try to unite the diaspora, especially in the Washington, D.C. area, but also in other cities. One topic that is, of a lot of importance for us is the topic of decolonization and self-determination. And that has been the focus of our work for at least, I will say, the last year and a half. And I think it's gonna be the focus of our work for the coming years. For me personally, is the most important issue, solving our colonial problem, is very important. So we have been working in this legislation that is being promoted by, I think, two of the most well-known congresswomen from Puerto Rico, from New York, Nydia Velázquez, that was born in Puerto Rico, and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, that was born in New York, but is from Puerto Rico origin. So they have this legislation that was introduced late last year, but it's gonna be introduced again next week. So you hear here first. It's gonna be introduced late next week, and it's gonna make a lot of news, and it's basically they are trying to put together what will be a serious, democratic, transparent self-determination process where the people of Puerto Rico are the ones that are at the steering wheel. But something that has never happened is that Congress is going to sit on the table. It creates a congressional bilateral group that is going to sit with the delegates of Puerto Rico to try to define what are the different status options, what do they mean, what do they entail, um, and 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 do an educational campaign for the people of Puerto Rico. So finally, we have something that is the most close to a binding self-determination process, and people in Puerto Rico can have the assurance that they can finally go after 6, 7 plebiscites, they can finally go and vote for something that is going to be taken into account. So we have been pushing um, this letter that we sent to the two leaders in the Senate and in the House, Senator Schumer from New York and Speaker Pelosi from California in the House, to try to support the Puerto Rico Self-Determination Act. We are building, and I think this is the most important takeaway in this topic. We are building a broad coalition of national organizations in the United States and also organizations in Puerto Rico, and we're very happy that Despierta Boricua Yale is one of these organizations that is supporting the Puerto Rico Self-Determination Act. We got just this week the support from Sunrise Movement, the national chapter of Sunrise Movement that I know has been very active within the young people in the universities and everything like that. So we're very happy about that. I just want to tell you that if you want more information, you can visit our website. It is botpr.org, and you can find more information. We have one-pagers, we have documents that you can use to inform yourself about this and learn about like things that you can do yourself. So I'm gonna take the final minutes here just to talk about what I think you can do and how you can involve if you are interested in getting involved in doing activism and advocacy for Puerto Rico from where you are. Most of you, I imagine, in the diaspora in Connecticut or somewhere else in the United States. So a couple of personal recommendations, things that I have learned myself, throughout the years is that you have to educate yourself first, and knowledge, I always say knowledge is power, and it's so important that you get to read, and you get to know what is happening, especially if you want to know about Puerto Rico, what is happening in Puerto Rico. Me personally, I get up every morning, and my alarm is the radio tuning, and it's the radio in Puerto Rico. And I'm the first hour or so when I'm doing things here in the house, just hearing the news in Puerto Rico, just to like stay abreast of like what is happening there. Very important, search what drives you. Always pursue your passion. For me, it's like obviously you have your work, but if you see yourself that you're doing something at 12 a.m., 1 a.m. in the morning, in the weekends, like we're doing now, and you're happy about it, that is because you're passionate about. And it might sound like silly or just simple, but it was kind of like the way that I learned that I really wanted to do this. And it didn't matter, if it was paid or not, you know, it was just in me. It was just like we receive like a call, or we receive like a request. We receive many requests to like get involved in different efforts, in different causes in Puerto Rico, in the US. And when you see yourself that you're paying attention and working on this, and you're happy about it in a weekend, that that's your passion. So that's very important. And then also, like, I imagine some of you are in the university right now. So I think getting involved with the student organizations is very important, since you're in the university. It helps you. I think it helped me try to learn about organizing, and trying to learn about how to engage with other people. So I think that's very important. And you also get, the experience and everything like that. Um, build relationships and networks. It's all about that, even in professional life. That's so important. And one of the things that we do is basically leverage the networks that we have in the US. Networks that we have because of family or people that we know, or acquaintances or friends, or the profession or work, something like that. So always, I say in Spanish, hay que darle cariño. Like, hay que darle cariño a la gente que uno conoce, to the people that we know. So building relationships and networks is very important. Fundamental, don't fear reaching out to stakeholders. And I say this as an example. Christian called me, and it was like, I want to talk to you, like, let's do this. And it was like, I like that. That's the way that you get things done. And as a matter of fact, many people ask us like, how you got, such a good relationship, for example, with Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, that is so hard to get, and other like decision makers. And I'm gonna tell you, like, she got there 2018, I think, right? 2019 January, and we were visiting her office. Since she just had like one person there, and we're visiting constantly her office. Asking, writing, and things like that. And you have to be perseverant, but you cannot fear reaching out to people. That's the way that you get things done. That's the way that you get things done, is reaching out. Um, and finally, a note, from myself, and something that I say to myself. For me, change is so important. And especially, I think, when we're very young, we're like very, I think, usually idealistic. And we think like, we're going to change the world and everything like that. And I think that's very important, and that's very important to like check yourself and keep that in mind as you grow old, because obviously life is going to just get harder and harder. So I think I see myself as a very privileged person. Uh, Although, I am, and I come, and I still am, a working person, working family person. But I know that we are very privileged. We are coming out. I imagine all of you, from an Ivy League school. Obviously, the opportunities are going to be there. You're going to have amazing networks. So there is so much that we can do to change the world for the better. And I always think that we have a social responsibility, to do that, because of the privilege that we have. So most than, like this time, with climate change and so much that is happening, the world needs change. So I always say to myself, never fear to be a radical or a revolutionary. That is the way that you can make change. And you can do it just in your own way. There is so many ways that you can be a radical, so many ways. So be it on your own way, but it's important. And I think we have that obligation to work day after day to make that path for change. So I include a couple of advocacy organizations that you can get involved. Obviously, you are Despierta Boricua at Yale, but there are other national organizations. There is the National Puerto Rican Student Coalition, and then there's some national advocacy organizations in the US, like our organization, Boricuas Unidos en la Diáspora, but also Power for Puerto Rico, that they do more of the advocacy lobbying efforts. Diáspora en Resistencia, they're more, I say in Spanish, come candela. They're like, doing the protests and everything like that. And then there are national organizations that are big allies of us, that are not necessarily, they're not Puerto Rican, but they do a lot of work about Puerto Rico. Center for Popular Democracy, CASA, SCIU, that is the union. And then there are many, many other regional, state, and local organizations. So that's where I want to like leave it. I think, I don't know, I see some chat, maybe Christian is saying to me that the time is up, but I would just end saying what I just said. Like, we have a social responsibility, and we're privileged, and we have a social responsibility to work for change. And I imagine many of you are idealists, so keep being idealists. Never stop dreaming, never stop being an idealist, and never stop thinking that you can change the world. And that's the way that you can do it. So with that, I leave you all with that. And if there is any questions, happy to like answer those.
Muchas gracias, Edil. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and call to action. I think I sort of speak for everyone in a sense in that it was not just inspirational, but I think it was very appropriate, especially considering the topics that we were able to touch upon through yesterday's sort of events at night. So thank you so much for being here. And right now, we're going to